is only 2 or 3.
Vamos a platicar con Greg Cooper.
I'm very bad.
¿Cómo está el nivel de contenido de este quinto ciclo?
What do you think about the level of the information of the academy participants?
Of these participants, and when you say level of information, do you mean the level of their expertise,
yes,
of their
exactly.
background?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I can only speak for the group that I worked with, and I was very pleased. We discussed risk, and as I said in my presentation, it's a new topic for laboratories. So there's no body of knowledge, there's no previous work to build on. So we're starting to build that work. And the people who were in the meeting, there were there were 2 directors of laboratories. There was one person who worked for a standards organization in Latin America, and there were some people who worked just doing the testing. They managed the testing areas in laboratories. So there was a nice spectrum of people with different experiences. Oh, and there was also an individual from a company, a commercial company, who her job was to troubleshoot equipment and to educate people on quality control. She said education, she was troubleshooting, fixing things on equipment. And so she had the manufacturing commercial background. So I was very pleased. I also know some of the other people who have come to this meeting, and they're all people who have very good backgrounds. They are people who are driven by their interest and their passion for what they do. You would have to be passionate about what you do to sit in a meeting that's like hours long, and they have been here all day long listening and contributing, and well, Cancun, yes. So I think that the caliber of people here is very, very good, very good.
In general.
In general. Yeah.
Después de escuchar todo el panorama, ¿qué idea, qué ve en Latinoamérica respecto al control de calidad?
What do you see control of quality in all American and Latin America?
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to one of the participants at lunch, and he asked me a similar question. He asked me if, he said, oh, the Latin American laboratories think that they are not as good as other laboratories around the world, and that they don't do as much as laboratories around the world. And in my former job, I just retired from BioRed. I was with BioRed for 20 years, and I'm now a private person. But I traveled many countries and talked to many laboratory people. And what I told him was that it's very interesting in that all laboratories around the world share the same experiences, and that while in this country they may not have regulations, perhaps in some countries they may not have regulations for quality or quality control. Mm-hmm. There are many other countries in the world who also do not have regulations for quality control. There are countries that have regulations for quality control. There are countries that require accreditation, but they don't enforce it. So it's voluntary. So no one does it. So the only difference I told him between laboratories in Latin America, laboratories in Eastern Europe, or even in Europe, and the United States and Canada, and some countries in Europe, is because they are in the advanced economies, and so they have more resources, they have more money. And so if they have more money, they can do more things. They can buy more things. So the laboratories in the United States, for example, if you go into a hospital laboratory there, every laboratory has an information system. Every laboratory does. But here, maybe not so. And it's not because the laboratory is not interested. It's not because they don't want it. It's not because they don't understand it. It's they can't afford it. And you don't have the money. And it seems as the money is the big difference between laboratories in certain countries and other countries. It's just that, as I said, in Canada and the United States, we are very fortunate to have money to do things, to have staff. But other than that, I think that the laboratories in Latin America are very much on par with many other laboratories around the world, and I also believe that in a number of countries in Latin America, they have a goal. They've given themselves a goal to progress, to do better, and I think this is just evolving.
Para dar verdaderos pasos hacia adelante, ¿cuál sería el primero? ¿Empezar por la ética o por la ley?
To begin, by little steps. The first step should be ethical or the law.
Ley o política pública.
Public politics,
Yes.
public policy. I think the first step should be, and often is, the professional ethics. It is because we in the laboratory see ourselves as necessary to helping people get better and to do good work and to do the right work. I've never really met a laboratory person who just didn't care, that it was just a job for them. They really do care about the people that they're working on. And I mentioned in my presentation that sometimes we lose sight of the patient. The patient becomes a number. The patient becomes a tube of blood because have too much work to do. We're focused on production. We're focused on process, and so we sometimes forget about the human being. But for the most part, that's only temporary, and it may be just today, but tomorrow I'm completely different. And I think that, but I would say I'm 99.99999% of laboratory people want to do what is ethical. They want to do what is professional. And then wanting something doesn't necessarily mean that it can happen, because you need to have the public policy. I mentioned in my presentation that we really need to, government can be a great ally. We oftentimes need government to be there to help us in the laboratory meet those goals of professional ethics and the goals of quality that we want to achieve. As an example, por ejemplo, in the United States, the reason that we have regulation, the reason that we have the CLIA regulation, is because of a public demand for laboratory quality. In the in the 1980s, the middle 1980s, many women were dying from cervical cancer because the laboratories they were going to it was all about revenue. It was all about money. So the laboratory was as